Deep Fried Thoughts, it's the best podcast. Deep Fried Thoughts. Don't worry, we're working on a better intro. All right, so welcome. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this was great. I remember when I reached out, I was like, I don't know if anybody's going to even respond to this. I didn't know like the size of your organization, or what that was like really to reach out and get somebody. So in that regard, I really do appreciate you reaching out and coming out here. And it was awesome that you happened to be in the area, during this time. So it was perfect.
Yep, serendipitous.
Yes. So for anybody listening, if you can just describe a little bit about your role in Our Duty and maybe a mission statement of Our Duty and what you guys are about.
Sure. So I'm the co-lead of the Western region of Our Duty. Our Duty is a group of parent advocates and other advocates now that are fighting against gender ideology. It started in the UK, and the group has grown to be in the United States, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and so we continue to grow, which is not a good thing because we actually don't want to exist. We don't want to have to be fighting against gender ideology. We want it to be over. We're nonpartisan, so we include all stripes. We're actually mostly Democrats in the United States. About 80% of our membership are Democrats. And we do the advocacy arm. So we fight bills, we fight laws, we write laws. We connect parents to attorneys so that they can file suit. We don't do the, leaning on the shoulder kind of that kind of position, because there's another group out there that does that called Parents of ROGD Kids, and they do it really well. I'm also a chapter leader of that group.
Okay.
So we're more of the advocacy. We're the boots on the ground. We're the doers. We're the fighters.
Interesting. So what's some of the goals that Our Duty has? I know you said trying to not exist, but anything more specific?
Our goals are to get gender ideology out of the schools, because the schools are the faucet. They're creating kids who are gender confused. They're planting the seed, and that seed germinates later in life or even instantaneously. So we want to get it out of the schools. We want to ban all gender interventions on any human under the age of 25. There's some of us who are abolitionists and don't want anyone to undergo these experimental procedures. And we want to protect parental rights, because right now, every state in the union, teachers are lying to parents when their children are taking on a gender identity. They're outright deceiving parents, and we need that to end.
So I'm sorry to cut you off. You said 25, and actually I was expecting to hear 18, which is where you usually hear the cutoff or something like that. What would be the reason of 25 versus 18? Obviously, I'll be honest with you, from my mindset, I would want nobody to have to undergo this or to feel that they have to, or to even have it as an option. But as far as the age 25, is there a reason? Is there something with developmenting of the mind, or?
Well, personally, I'm an abolitionist myself. I don't think anybody should undergo these type of interventions. I haven't met a trans-identified person who is doing well in life. So I think it's foolhardy, and you can't change sex. So I agree with you on that. But the under 25 is more of a pragmatic line in the sand, because the frontal lobe doesn't fully form until the age of between 23 and 25. And I work with a lot of detransitioners, and a lot of people transition after the age of 18 because they can, because parents lose control once a child becomes 18. So we have kids who are just biding their time until their 18th birthday, and then they walk right into Planned Parenthood, and they're able to walk out with a prescription for estrogen or testosterone, no questions asked.
So it's more of that gap of independence to discover, rather than just jumping right from parents to, hey, this is what I wanted to do. Like, give them to have time of, I guess, developing still.
Correct. I mean, people do really silly things still at the age of 18. Actuaries already know this. There's a reason why 18-year-olds can't rent a car.
That was my first thought, was they're renting the car.
Exactly. And VRBO, like, you can't rent a house. insurance rates are really high for 18 to 25-year-olds for a reason, because that frontal lobe still isn't formed. And what the missing aspect is their ability to understand long-term consequences. Mm-hmm. The long-term consequences for transitioning are irreversible, forever, and life-changing and horrible. So they're 19-year-olds who are thinking, I don't ever want kids. What do I care?
It's interesting you brought that up, because one of the first things that popped in my mind, and I've thought about this before, is the exact argument you said about the not understanding lifelong decisions at that age. Because, I mean, we've all been there. Anybody over that age knows when you look back, you didn't really understand. A lot of us, like for me, I always thought, I'm not going to even live till 30. These stupid thoughts, so I'm going to do whatever I want now. And now, I'm 35, and I'm like, what a stupid thought. Now I'm like, you have to constantly be just assuming you're going to live, the longest you possibly can. But and you get more of a grasp on time. But it's interesting because college debt seems to be a big conversation now. Not to get into the politics of that, but I often hear the same advocates saying that people in these younger age groups should be able to make these lifelong decisions, are also arguing that when they were 17, 18, 19 years old getting these huge debts, that they weren't able to comprehend something that drastic. And I'm like, that's financial. This is like your body. How can you not see the correlation? If you're making one argument about the way the mind can comprehend, that's all across the board. That's not something specific. So it's interesting that certain things get picked and choosed with things like that. But what got you into this type of work and into our duty?
Well, the gender fairy flew into my house.
Interesting.
Yeah. So my daughter became trans-identified at the age of 13. And that was eye-opening to me. I knew things were going wrong in the public schools before that, because my daughter in 7th grade had a sex ed course that was 5 hours long. 1 hour was completely dedicated to gender identity.
Now, how long ago was this?
This was in 2018, I believe she had the class.
Okay.
And the interesting part is, I was a volunteer at that school. I drove for every class trip. I was that mom who was there at lunchtime, taking pictures for graduation, running the walk-a-jog. I was so involved in that school. The teachers knew me by name. The administrators knew me. And I had no idea that a third party was coming in to indoctrinate our kids. So my daughter went to that class. She and her friends came home to my house on Friday after the gender aspect, and all of them took on an LGBTQ identity. Every single one of these girls.
This was immediate after the class.
Immediate. These kids were 11. They took on pansexual, which I had to look up what that meant, polyamorous, lesbian, non-binary. They all took something on. And then they laughed at me when I said, I don't understand this. They said, well, you're cis, boomer.
This was back in 2018.
This is in 2018. And I thought, what is going on at our school? What is cis, this made-up word? It's still a made-up word, by the way.
Chills, because this is something that a lot of us are finding out now. And, it boggles my mind. It's like, I feel very detached from this. Obviously, before this happened, this was, as new as this was to you, is kind of a little bit of a feeling I'm getting right now just hearing this, because one of the things I had heard was similar to your story. Somebody was talking about their child coming home and telling their mother that they were lesbian, and it was similar where they were saying, that it's because they were cis and this and that, and they were like, I didn't even know what this was. And then I asked my daughter, what does it mean that you're a lesbian? And she's like, well, I like girls. And she's like, what do you mean you like girls? Well, I love them. And she's like, well, do you love boys? I love boys. And it was interesting because it made me wonder the motivation behind it. Do they know that they're manipulating this child, or is that just happening as a I don't understand where the gap is.
Okay, first of all, you nailed it. You nailed it. when they talk about like we need to be inclusionary and we need to have these students know what gay and lesbian mean. Now, I'm from California. I voted for same-sex marriage. I'm not homophobic, and your listeners may disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But when you ask an 11-year-old, just like you asked your daughter, do you like girls or boys better? All the little girls are going to say, I like girls. Boys are yucky.
Of course.
They give them terminology that they can't possibly comprehend. I was in love with a girl named Margaret in 6th grade. I was in love with her. She was amazing. She was great at basketball. She was beautiful. She was smart. If somebody gave me language, I would have said I was a lesbian. I wasn't in love with her. I wanted to be her. I admired her. But now the schools are giving this language. Well, that means you're a lesbian. No, it's not. It's you admire this person. And then we can get deeper into this, but this crosses all over to the DEI stuff and the oppressor and being oppressed.
The DEI, what does that stand for?
Discrimination, inclusion, or equity and inclusion.
Okay. I've heard it said like that. Okay.
Yeah. So what that does too is it tells white, middle class, or affluent, children of two parents, children who never missed a meal, that they are oppressors, that they are bad people, that they caused all the racism and horrible things in our world. You tell that to a young kid going through puberty, they don't want to be that bad person. So they jump into victimhood because victimhood now is the winner in everything in the United States. Be a victim. Don't be the oppressor. Don't be the bad person. So these kids, the only thing that they can jump into is the LGBT community because no one can question them on that. They can't change the color of their skin. They can't change whether they are economically challenged or not. They can't change any of that stuff. But they can say that they're now in this good person group as opposed to the oppressor group. And so that's a component of this too. These kids are taught self-loathing. You're bad because you're affluent. You're bad. I mean, Asian is now white adjacent, right?
Yeah.
So they don't even count as being a race. You're either good or bad. And these kids want to be the good ones.
Of course. And this is being taught to very young children. You're talking about like preteens as well?
Oh, it's worse now. So that was 2018. They are now teaching it at TK, which is 4 years old. They bring in books called, The Red Crayon. This is a book all about transgenderism. It's cute. It's a crayon that wants to change colors.
Of course. Yeah, the age stuff is boggling my mind. I'm not homophobic. I am a Christian. I do believe it's sinful in nature. But I look at lying as sinful in nature. I look at anything really, that we're told not to do that, against God is sinful in nature. I would never treat anybody differently because of it. I don't really think about it too often. It's not like I would meet somebody and think anything differently towards them. I love people. I feel like everybody's got a story, and I have a hard time not loving anybody I meet because there's always something, even the most evil people that I've encountered in my life, there's something to love about them. I feel like we're all connected in some way, and dismissing somebody over one aspect of their life seems very silly to me. So that's the difference between being a Christian and also just being a human here on this earth and how I feel and interact with human beings, just to clear that up. But I don't want my children to be indoctrinated, and I feel like more and more everything they're watching, even the younger and younger TV shows, is getting worse and worse. And it's not just like added in for entertainment value. Like I was watching some show that was obviously a clone of Paw Patrol, which my kids loved, and it was a really cheaply made like CGI clone of it. And they were like, "Oh, I want to watch this." I watched like 2 episodes with them, and I was like, "Okay, this is fine." And I went and I'm working in the kitchen, and I hear something. I was like, "That's kind of weird." And I pop in, and the episode was all about somebody had lost. I forget what it was, but there was an encounter where one of the kids, was hanging out with their mom the whole time, and everybody came over together, and then their other mom came. Okay, if that was just in the show, I would probably roll my eyes and walk away. And I wouldn't think much of it, because if I made a big deal, then my kids are wondering why. And I'm like, first of all, I don't think that should be in the show, but that's my opinion, whatever. But I stayed and listened for a few seconds, and it just became all about how Two Mommies is great and awesome. And there is an aspect and an argument that you can make that that's trying to help include people like that. But at a young age, they're not anti that. So you're adding something in before they've even had a chance to think about it, and that bothered me. And it felt very indoctrinating. The way it was just like it went from being like a decently written children's show to just like repeating the same things over and over. And I was like, they're just saying this until the kids just know it as truth. And I felt really uncomfortable. I wound up getting rid of Disney that day. I was so mad because actually what I did was I went and then tried to change the rating of what they were allowed to watch. And I made it the most strict rating you could possibly have on the kids' profile. And then I started searching for things. And what it was allowing to come in was really uncomfortable for me. Like there was one cartoon, I think it was called Out, and it was about an uncle coming out to his family about being gay. And I was like, I just don't know, I don't understand why that would be in this like really young child's thing. Like it was like Y7 or whatever it is, like below 10. Why does that need to be a subject talked about? They want to learn. I want them to learning about shapes and colors and what floats and what sinks and fun experiments and learning about the world around them. Not these kinks and these things that should be left behind closed doors, in my opinion. Which is where I don't have a problem with people. I just don't want things broadcasted, and everything just seems to be getting sexualized now. But I've noticed that with many of the different streaming services. I've canceled more and more. Now I'm down to just the ones I get for free and Amazon Prime, and even that I'm like, they're not allowed to watch any of it. They watch a Christian one called Yippee. It's got like Veggie Tales and stuff that's curated for kids, and it's not like indoctrinating even in the other direction. It's just kid shows without anything sexual, and it's crazy that I had to seek that out. But anyway, I'm ranting here.
No.
It just boggles my mind.
It's all true, and it's gotten worse and worse, and every year it gets worse. And there's no reason why a child needs to be exposed to gay relationships. Zero. And again, I moved to California from Pennsylvania because I was so liberal, and I don't believe that kids need to learn that. I didn't grow up on that, and I'm not homophobic. So it doesn't do anything except make a child think about sexual relationships when they're young. There's no need for it. And there is, I'll give a plug for the Daily Wire. They came out with all these kid shows now that are clean and not indoctrinating. So you might want to...
Yeah, I just heard it's something in Key, right? Or Bent Key.
Bent Key. Yeah, I haven't watched it because my kids are older. But yeah, they have made their way into... I mean, Disney's awful. It's so shameful. It's such a shame. It's such a shame. But they're attacking the young children because children are malleable. And there's actually... there's policies and written where the ACLU, GLSEN, I think it's GLSEN GLAD, wrote a policy that says get the kids when they're young. I mean, it actually says that to manipulate children because it's easy. Children believe in Santa Claus.
That's always the example I give.
It's as simple as that. I tried this out on an 11-year-old. I tried to trick an 11-year-old, and it was so easy. I convinced him that there was a goat man living on this island who was going to attack us. This is an 11-year-old kid who is now able to make gender decisions. That's how malleable these kids are. They fall for everything hook, line, and sinker. And when it's the teacher doing it, there are two people that kids follow religiously. Their parents and their teachers. Teachers have this lauded status. I mean, I know you homeschool, but I used to take my kids to the grocery store and they would see the teacher and they would flip out like, the teacher doesn't eat.
I remember that as a kid,
yeah.
Running into a teacher a few times in public.
So when the teacher says, you can change sex, or, being gay is great, put all their flags all over the place, this influences the child. And that's not okay. Let the child grow up Let the child grow up. Kids don't need to know about sex at 11 years old. Legally, they're not allowed to have sex. This is all by design. So I don't know if you understand queer theory, but this isn't.
I've heard many examples of it.
Yes.
I wouldn't know like the base idea of it, but
I mean,
many examples.
The simplest is to take everything that is considered normal and good and flip it upside down. So if having a immediate family, a husband, wife, children, is good and normal, let's destroy that. And you can see that with language. Now they use chosen family. You don't like your family, you can choose another.
Are you describing a cult? Because that's what it sounds like. That's exactly what this sounds like.
It is for me, gender ideology is a cult. Because I'll go back to a little bit about my experience, if that's okay.
No, please do.
So daughter gets the seed planted, right? Girls can be boys, boys can be girls. And by the way, there's a list of all these different identities that you could be. I go to the parenting class because I was like, whoa, what are they teaching at this school now? This is my school, the school I spend hours with. I go to the third-party parenting class. These two guys are up there and they say, if you're not G.I. Joe and you're not Barbie, you're somewhere on the gender spectrum. I'm like, are you kidding me? So we're all trans? Because there is no G.I. Joe and there is no Barbie and there's no perfect way to be a woman or perfect way to be a man. I was a complete tomboy. Everyone thought I was a boy until I was 13. I mean, this is nonsense. We're going backwards in time as far as definitions of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man. And people are just sitting there like drinking it up. And I just keep saying, this is nonsense. What do you mean I should introduce myself with my pronouns? What does a child care about? Like, should I be introducing myself? Hi, my name's Erin and I like to have sex with men. Like, this is absurd.
That is the feeling I get when I see these children's shows saying it. It's like, I never knew that the parents of the Rugrats were having sex and that's how the kids got there. It's not brought up. I'm a child. It's just, oh, that's their mommy and daddy. I have a mommy and daddy. So that's why, like, even if they wanted to put two mommies and not mention anything about it, that there are kids who would see that and feel comfortable with that and identify with that. And that's fine for me to a degree. It's just going that extra step. Like, in what world in what case do I introduce myself by my sexuality? I don't understand that. I don't get it. I feel like a lot of these things are further dividing us rather than bringing inclusion. It seems like they're doing the complete opposite of what they say they're doing. Like a lot of organizations or things will come about where their name directly says something. It's like, oh, you read the name and you think, oh, they must be about that. And you don't think any further into it. And you look and it's like, wait, everything they're doing is completely opposite of that. And it's this very sneaky tactic. And now it seems to be just attacking language in general. But yeah, what a weird example to give with the Barbie and G.I. Joe. And you hit it on the head. They're both unrealistic standards that are for, kids to imagine and have fun with a Barbie and for boys to have this big mask. Like, that's not what people look like. It's for fun. So to put that as the two examples, yeah, everybody's trans then. Everybody's fluid at that point. That's crazy.
Right, and that's the beginning. They passed out a piece of paper with I think 40 gender identities. I just sat there. My mouth was just like demi boy, minotaur. There's a minotaur gender. This psychologist at UCSF. Which is, a massive gender clinic in San Francisco. She says there's an infinite number of genders.
I've heard this.
This is nonsensical. That when a 2-year-old unsnaps their onesie, he's gender communicating. Good Lord, what happens when your 2-year-old rips off their gloves? What is he indicating then? He shouldn't have hands? I mean, the nonsense behind this, people need to wake up and understand that this is all BS. I'm 56 years old. I would get out of my bed, put my clothes on, and go to school. I was Erin. That's it. There's no gender identity. There's no feeling of what I am that day. I just am. That's it. And when I introduce myself to you, I'm just Erin. You can like me or not like me. You don't need to know anything else about me except my name. And then we'll chat, and then you'll figure out. So it's all really by design to flip everything that is good and make it bad. And it's, people always ask me the why. Why is this happening?
That's where I said.
Yeah, the why. And there's no one answer for it because this is a multi-headed hydra. So money. Look, there's always money. The answer to any question when you say why, money is always there. The transgender movement is worth billions of dollars. Multitude of billions. Each child who says that they're trans is worth about $1 million.
Now you're talking about over the lifetime, if they can have somebody if somebody identifies as trans, you're talking about like in the medical industry, things like that?
That's correct. Okay. So if in 2007, there was one pediatric hospital doing, sex changes on kids, one in Boston. Now there are over 300 because it's a cash cow. So it's money for body parts. It's money for sterility and, fertility.
I actually work with a surgical nurse now. I work on wells, so I'm doing somewhat physical labor and plumbing work. And I work with a guy who's been there for about 8 months. And he was working at a local hospital as a surgical nurse on the board of something. I don't know exactly what the board was specifically, but anything coming down the line, he'd be like the first to know, and they would discuss it and how to implement that. And he was there to give his input as a surgical nurse. And he left that career, which it boggles my mind on a cold day. Sometimes I'll look over and I'm like, don't you just wish you were in the surgery room? Stand there hanging out, talking, relaxed, and not freezing, your fingers off, working out outside like this. And he's like, nope, I don't miss it at all. And the reason is that they started introducing the ideas of gender reassignment surgeries and that they were looking into it and wanting to branch out into things like that. And they wanted him to be the advocate in his area and like in his section of the hospital to try and help implement that, see how it's going to go, things like that. It's very disturbing to think of that. And that's why he's like, I knew somewhere, he wound up losing his job for other things because he was pushing back. And it was a very silly story I won't get into, but I said, well, why didn't you just go to another hospital, this and that? And he goes, wherever I go, this is coming down the line. Everybody's talking about it, and I refuse to be a part of it. And that's scary. It's a scary thought that you can't be opposed to that and have your job.
Well, that makes me really sad, that story, because those people have to stay in that profession, those good teachers, because there's a lot. Like, I don't want to throw the whole profession under the bus. They need to stand up. There are more of us who are against this. I mean, many more Republicans, independents, Democrats who are against this, religious, non-religious. Gays Against Groomers is a large outfit fighting against this.
They're incredible.
The LGB Alliance is fighting against this. I work with both the women's groups and gay groups and the right-wing groups. I'm the middle person. We're all fighting this. And if people had the backbone, which they need to do, because we're at a tipping point, they need to stand their ground and go back to that board and say, we shouldn't be doing this. We should not be cutting off healthy body parts of children. So you want to look at this as a potential for our hospital to do this? No.
So he was actually fired over rumors started. He said that, and again, I wasn't there, so this is what he's told me, is that he was standing up for that and fighting against it. He's like, I was very vocal about it. And he said, and all of a sudden, all these rumors started coming around about me. Oh, he's getting drunk on the job. He's doing this. He's doing that. Oh, he said something racist. And I know this guy. I've never heard anything like this. It's just not the kind of guy he is. And he said that all these rumors started coming around all around the time he started pushing back until they fired him over it. And he said it was I won't tell you the story, but it was something very silly. Like that, I was just shocked when he said he was fired over it. So he was saying that his reason I'm not going in it is because he's like, when I fought, they set me out. He's got 10 kids to support, which is crazy. Good for him. He's like, I need something that I just know I can have this income.
And I understand. I understand that, but and I'm not picking on him because
it's fine.
I don't know his story. But I'm talking.
I just didn't want to completely throw him under the bus.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm talking to the audience because I'm really quite tired of people saying that they're scared and that they don't want to lose their job. And lose your job and sue. There's lots of lawyers out there waiting to take these lawsuits or gather all the documents and become a whistleblower and get protected that way.
Absolutely.
Reveal this stuff. People need to know what is happening in these boardrooms and that they're selling kids for dollars and for profit. Let's go on a little bit more about the money aspect of it because it's not just the going in. These kids go in and they get their body parts removed or they get on puberty blockers. Then they're sterile. Then what do? They enter into the world of surrogacy. They buy themselves a baby. They use that from women's bodies, poor women's bodies. So when we talk about this being a kindness movement and inclusion movement, no, again, on the backs of women, this movement goes, right? Because women's spaces are being invaded by males. Women's jails have males in there. Women can't, I mean, in Sacramento, we have bathrooms up there, male and others. So again, surrogacy is worth tons of money. Pornography. I think it's the number 3 or 4 most watched pornography is trans pornography.
Really?
So yeah,
wow.
There's money to be made there.
I wouldn't even think that would even be anywhere near the top.
Oh no, it's because it's depraved. Because it's unique. Remember, anybody who's watching a lot of pornography has to step it up. The algorithm and their endorphins require more and more demonic type of porn. So, I mean, we're digressing a bit, but do you remember Skinamax? There used to be Skinamax.
I remember the name.
Yeah.
Oh, was that like Cinemax at night?
It was Cinemax, and like after 11.
Unfortunately, as a young kid, I was well aware of it.
Yeah. But it was more of the porn was more of lovemaking, should we say? And it didn't show everything. It wasn't super salacious. But that died on the vine because it's not enough. Because once you start getting addicted to that, you have to move on to more. Playboy got pushed out because we have Pornhub. Once you go on Pornhub, you go on there 1 or 2 times and they start pushing harder and harder porn towards you. So everything has to be one step higher. You have to go from a heterosexual viewing to then, group sex to choking to, whatever. But it's always a step up and it's all tied together. This stuff is all tied together. The sexualization of kids, the changing of body parts. Boys on, let me go.
No, yes.
Boys that go on estrogen, their penises never grow. So they go on puberty blockers and estrogen and they have micro penises. That's a fetish for people. That's a fetish. Never grows again. And they look young. So you can have an 18-year-old who looks like a 12-year-old when they're on puberty blockers. So there's a really dark, dirty side to this. Pedophilia is a part of the transgender movement. It's all tied together. So when people ask why, I'm like, it's the money. There's huge money. Sex. You put a little girl on testosterone, and you have a girl who's never going to say no. You probably know this. Women were the gatekeepers. I was a free to be you and me, but we still are the ones who say no. Men will say yes every time. I'm not throwing men under the bus, but that's just...
It's human nature.
Yeah, it's how they're built. You put testosterone that doesn't belong in a woman's body at that level, because women do have natural testosterone, but you put it to that level, and you're going to make a 16-year-old say yes to everything. So there's that aspect of what's going on with transgenderism. They really want to get to a point where 12-year-olds can consent to sex. That's where we're moving. 12 is this magic number and make everything a free-for-all.
The correlation you just made, and this is what I was trying to step in, you just kind of blew my mind. I feel like you just connected a dot I never saw. And I believe you, and I 100% stand with you in the fact that you're always looking for more in porn. This is years ago when I was just smoking weed and I was living in Philly. Just all I did was get high all day, drink, and watch porn. I mean, I feel like I wasn't working. I was collecting checks, and it's just the depravity of the things I sought out. They went from very gentle and not to go too deep. It really started, as embarrassing to say, I was looking up porn for women, because that was like the Skinamax that I grew up with was more like, because everything was so weird and like aggressive. And I was like, am I gay? Why am I looking up porn for women? Because I'm looking for this like sweet stuff. And then by the end, it's like very violent and like aggressive. And I was like needing something more. It got to the point where it was so weird. I remember talking to one person about it, and they were, expressing the same thing. And I started learning, oh, this is real. You're like, where does this end? And it started freaking me out because it started affecting physical relationships in real life. And it made me really uncomfortable to the point where I just had to get away from it. I hate it. And I'm seeing a lot of people online right now, a lot of prominent figures and celebrities going anti-porn. And I think it's a great thing. But the progression, I've often wondered where that ends, because it seems like it goes towards children from when I'm listening to interviews or TED Talks. And it's like a lot of people get shut down when they say that. But I'm like, but where else? What's more depraved? And the connection you just made of that, it's making me think, all right, if you look at the numbers of the amount of individuals, just say here in America, that are watching porn, according to stats and computer usage, I think it's like over 50% of the internet is dedicated to that. And as far as like the trafficking of internet usage is pornography. If that many people are consuming it and that many people are heading down this track, it seems like a serious and a realistic possibility that is the correlation between, because I wanted to ask you why. Why are people falling for these things? Why are people falling, just jumping into these crazy ideologies? And if a majority of our nation is being debased and depraved in behind closed doors, eventually all things in the dark are there's light shed on them. And I wonder if that's what we're seeing now. I wonder if the porn is a more close-knit connection to this than a lot of us think.
Well, when you listen to detransitioners, they always talk about the fact that porn was an aspect of it. So I'll give you an example. When a girl puts on her Instagram FTM, which stands for female to male, that is a beacon for pedophiles and older men to find that kid. First of all, they've got a victim. They've got a child who is disassociating with their natural body because they're not accepting themselves as female. So this body isn't part of them. They are told that they have a male brain and a female body, so they're going to get rid of that female body. I have text messages sent to my daughter from sugar daddies saying, or from older girls who were trans-identified saying, we can find you a sugar daddy who will buy things for you, through Amazon. You just give your list of what you want, and, you can do a dance for them. You can show, your butt in and not your head. So your head is cut off, but you're showing your body, and it's not your body anyway, because you're going to get rid of those breasts because you're actually a boy. So they prey on this, disconnection with their natural bodies to use these girls as sexual beings. For the boys get into this, not always, but a lot, through sissy porn, which is pornography that has two gay men and one is dressed up as a woman and is just debased, the French maid kind of outfit, and sort of like the Bud Light woman, just that 100 days of being a girl.
Yeah.
This this ridiculous caricature of a woman, and then they're humiliated. And gay boys start watching this, and they think that they're that woman, that fictional woman. And so sissy porn plays a part in the boys thinking that they're women. So it's all interconnected. And then here's another thing. I'm sorry, this is such a horrible conversation for a Saturday morning, but here we go. Part of the whole movement in breaking up the family. Look, I had Child Protective Services come to my home when I read my School the Riot Act because they were calling my daughter a male name. I had the police show up. I'm an attorney, so I was lucky. They never came back. But people are losing custody of their children because they refuse to transition them. Those children then go into foster care. Foster care is not a good place to land, especially if you're 12. They don't get adopted. A runaway, a trans kid, they don't get adopted by good families. They go into either group homes. Group homes are the opening for sex traffickers, drug pushers. Most group homes, and I don't know what it's like in Pennsylvania, but in California, they're unlocked. So these kids can come and go, and sitting right outside those doors are those sex traffickers. So now we're into the sex again, right? So they took the child from the loving parents who were holding the line, threw the kid into foster care, and then that kid is gone. So when they talk about kids in foster care, there's an abundance of foster care kids that are trans-identified. This is why, because they're taking them. Or they're worse, which happened to me again. They're enticing these kids to run away from their loving families. Schools actually do that. They tell the kids where to go, how to run away. And then that child becomes a stable, one of the horses in the stable for sex traffickers, and they're gone. The changing of names, the easy way of changing names and sex of these kids, all those kids coming across the border, they're disappearing. They're disappearing. So it's a big cabal. It's way bigger than what most people know. And that's why, like I banged the drum so much, we have to stand up. Like, this is a whole generation. There's 50 million people trafficked in the world, and most of them are in the United States. And most of them are kids. And we're not protecting them. We're taking them from loving families under the rubric of, you're a bigot, you're a Christian, you don't deserve to have your kid because you don't accept their gender identity. It's a way to steal them away and use and abuse them. So it's a really dark place that we're in, but we can change it if people stand up. If people just don't sit around and talk about it and complain, do something.
It does feel like the tides are shifting. I don't have one example of that. Just in rhetoric and people standing up, I'm starting to see more of it. It's interesting sometimes the things that get me hyped that would have just been a normal thing to say 5-10 years ago. But it seems like people are standing up and being less and less afraid to say the things that they want to say. Like, even, have you seen the Sound of Freedom film?
Yes.
I remember when that movie ended, my wife and I saw it in the theaters. I had this overwhelming urge to do something, and I wish I could say, hey, I started to do something. It's just been on my mind constantly since I saw it. I wanted to quit my job. I wanted to go run out. I wanted to buy a plane ticket and go take kids back. I thought about my own kid. I was in shock when we left. I mean, I'm like holding back tears now. It was such an emotional experience to see that. And I kept thinking the whole movie, why did they try and fight against this movie? There's nothing political in here. Like, because it was, at the time, it was getting such backlash, and people were just trashing it online and giving it bad ratings, like rating bombing it. And it seemed to be just something they were really trying to hide from the public. And I thought, oh, this must be like a really right-wing movie, and I'm used to that stuff just being hated on. I didn't see anything like that in there. It was a true story about a guy who saves children from being trafficked. And I started learning more about his organization and him. And I didn't realize how prominent this stuff was. And a lot of times, until you see something and understand the way it works, there's a disassociation where it's not real. But anyway, I am curious because we keep getting distracted, and it's my fault, so I apologize. But because a lot of stuff you're saying is just, I want to, it's a lot to unpack. Your own experience with your daughter. Can you walk me through a little bit more of that? And I will just give you the floor to tell me just, from that meeting until, now. If you can give me a brief understanding.
Sure. So the seed was planted, 7th grade, sex ed. COVID hit, and, California, we had our schools shut down. Living on the internet, no one was going out. Very different from my son. My son and his friends still, broke curfew and, would go play in the fields. But the girls stayed in their ivory towers, and they lived online. And there's nothing we could really do about it. They went to school online. Everything was online. And that's where the indoctrination occurs again and again. So when she started 9th grade, I didn't set foot in the school. Teachers never met her. That school started to call her by a male name and use male pronouns. And that is what I heard through down the hall, because she's, of course, down the hall.
So this wasn't something that when she came home one day and said, "Hey, Mom, I want you to call me this instead."
No, this I heard happening in my house. I knew something was going wrong with her because she got very depressed. She cut off her hair. She started wearing giant sweatshirts, skater clothes. Everything was dark in her room. This was a big difference from the child I raised. My daughter was extremely girly. I'm a tomboy, so it was actually hard for me because I'd have to sit down and play dollies, and I don't really like that. I'd rather kick a ball. Artsy kid, liked dresses, sparkly clothes, tees, very, very girly. And then she went the opposite and started getting angry and mean. Started to call me by my first name, Colt, right? This is a Colt move. Disengage with Mom, now call her Erin. The friends who were allowed to go out at all were bad kids. They were, I don't want to call them bad kids. They were kids who were struggling. So kids who were smoking pot, 13. One kid was doing LSD, self-tattooing, self-piercing, just not being parented. And I don't want to blame the parents, too, because these kids were tough. They used to come over to my house, and I would confiscate their bags. I would go through them. I shouldn't have let them in. Hindsight's 20/20, but I don't want the sins of the parent. I mean, once I became a mother, I felt like I was a mother to all, so I wanted to protect these kids, too. But they had a terrible influence on my daughter. So she met an older trans-identified kid through an anime convention. This kid was smart, very likable, but broken. She had been sexually assaulted as a child, and she was the one who was telling my daughter how to find a sugar daddy. And she was holding court on Instagram with groups of young girls on how to disassociate with their bodies. And she was cool. She was the older girl. She was the groomer. And I don't hate her because something happened to her to make her be this way. But my daughter was lonely. She fell into this trap. And they promised these kids that when you transition, everything's going to be great. You're going to be so happy. All those sorrows you have are going to magically disappear as soon as you transition. So my daughter bought it. Lonely, sad. She got to the point of where she was barely getting out of bed, not even going on to online school, not eating, doing whatever this older girl did, barely brushing her teeth, hygiene issues, because she was so depressed. Telling a child, you are born wrong, everything is wrong with you. The medical community is the only thing that can fix you, otherwise you are wrong. And by the way, mom and dad don't love you. Those people that you grew up with don't love you and don't accept you. And they're bigots, and you need to run away. And here we're going to tell you how to run away. Tell that to a child. What do you think happens to that child? That child decompensates and goes into a deep, dark hole because they are now told that that mom and dad who was with them through their whole lives, who built birdhouses and clubhouses and took them to high teas, actually doesn't love you. Horrible thing to do to a kid. So I looked for every medical doctor I could find, psychiatrist, psychologist, to help us. Every single one of them told me to transition my child.
That was their response.
Celebrate your new son. They gave me the suicide stats. Would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son? I finally found a psychiatrist out of state. I was really lucky in that when my daughter went down the rabbit hole, Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage, had come out, like right when she came out. So I had a book with all these experts named in the book, and I called every single one of them. I called them in England. I called every single one. Can you help me? Nobody knew how to get your kid out of this. They knew what was going on. And so I followed my gut because I'm sorry, parents need to claim their parenthood back. We've lost it. We were told, follow the lead of our kids. That's BS. Parent. Your kids, by the way, don't have to like you all the time. You're actually not a good parent if they like you all of the time. Set up boundaries. You can take the phone from your child. I took the phone. I took her out of the public school. I cut her off from all of those bad influence friends. I was going to move out of the country. I was going to do anything to save my child.
What was the conversation like between you and her at this time? Did she know why these things were being done? Were you...
You can't explain the why to somebody in a cult. You can only, I did these things, I call them drive-bys. So I would ask a question and not wait for the answer to make her think that she's coming by this the right way. Or I would accidentally leave, a kid's book out that is about bodies being beautiful. I would leave stories out. I did things like I would ask her, why do you think you're a boy? And she would say, well, I don't like my breasts. Okay. Why else? I don't like my period. I said, okay, well, you just told me why you don't like being a girl, but you haven't told me why you think you're a boy. And then I walk away. And so I let it sit with her because you can't go in directly. You can't say, this is horrible for you. This is a cult. They're trying to get you, blah, 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 blah. They're too young. Again, that brain is not developed. You have to do it in a way that they can understand. We listened to a bunch of podcasts about cults. And then at the end of it, like the third one, I said, some people think trans is a cult. And I walked away. You don't want to get into the fight. You just let it lie there. So there were a lot of things that I did, that I think some of the therapists were like, don't do that. I'm like, I'm doing it. I started to protest, and I left all my signs all over the house. Everything was in plain sight. There was no hiding the way I felt about this, because I knew I raised a beautiful child, an intelligent child, and that she loved me. I knew down in her belly that there was still that love and that she respected me. And so if she saw Mom fighting so hard, that there has to be something to it, because I'm not crazy, and I'm a liberal. So I think that aspect, and she started to see some of the things that were happening to her friends. Like, do you not notice all of your friends have mental health diagnoses? Because that's another thing that these kids do. They all want to claim, I'm ADHD, I'm OCD, I'm this. Like, it's a badge of honor to have mental health issues. They watch TikTok so much that they get these tics, Tourette's, these kind of fake Tourette's, but they really believe it, and so they do it.
I've talked about it on here. I downloaded a TikTok account for the podcast, and I never intended to go on it and look, but every time you open it up, it starts a video before I can go to my page. And I talked about it on here with somebody. I said, I don't know if they want me to just think that everybody in the world has a disorder, but I can't find anything to pop up on my page that isn't somebody with Tourette's, somebody with a major, massive burn victim, or somebody with a severe disability. And I'm like, I feel weird even saying that, because I don't have a problem with these people, but when I go outside, I don't see this. When I go open up TikTok, everybody has a mental health thing. That's all they talk about. And it felt very unusual, the balance.
So remember what I talked about, the oppressor. What's another way to get into victimhood? Have a mental health issue. And so they give them to themselves. And also the schools are giving them to them. They talk about it so much. Are you suicidal? I mean, you have young kids. Don't ever leave the pediatrician's office. When they turn 12, they're going to ask you to leave. Don't leave. They're going to ask your child if they ever thought about suicide. These are planting seeds.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust them at all. I mean, I was, we're not going to get into it totally, but I was sexually abused as a young boy by multiple people in my life. I used to think that I had a target on my head, or that this was just normal because we'd move and it would happen again, and we move, and it even happened from a doctor at one point, and that was real weird. I remember when I was like 17, I was talking about that one visit you got to go to where they have to make sure that you can get erect and make sure that your body works. And I was like, and I did like a motion, and they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I didn't mean to make, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't, they were like, what? I was like, that visit you got to go to with it. And I started talking about it and speaking it for the first time. I realized what happened, and it freaked me out. Yeah, I don't trust anybody. Like you said, especially with my young kids. Like, there's just not a chance. I keep seeing more and more, and looking back at my own life, like the freedoms, and I love my mom to death. I have no, I don't like to even say this stuff a lot because sometimes she listens, and I have no qualms against her. But I had a lot of freedoms as a child, mostly because it was, she was a single mom. I had a lot of freedoms, probably a lot more than I should have ever had. And through that, people took advantage, and that's really what it was. It wasn't that I was different in any way, but I was made to think that in certain realms. Like, I was a girl for Halloween one time, and it's weird. I think back, like, if I went through my childhood now, I would be gay at least, or trans, and that's what makes me question even just homosexuality. How much is a choice and how much is nature versus nurture? Because I see what was done to me and things that were said to me in private, and to where I had to question. And in my early years as a young adult, I was experimenting with things, and I thought maybe this is who I am because I liked it when I was a kid and this was done, and my body reacted in a positive way. So maybe that is right, because I didn't have any other experience to associate it with. But yeah, a lot of manipulation, and that's why I'm very cautious about everything I hear, and especially with trans and gay, like the LGBT specifically, not just gay, but the LGBT movement and the trans movement. I'm just very leery about everything I hear. But anyway, more about your daughter. You said, so the things you were leaving around, did this eventually have an impact in the other direction?
Yes. Well, and let me say I'm sorry that that happened to you. That's very, very common with the boys also who say that they're trans, and also with the
I will
girls.
say I'm more grateful for it than almost anything I've ever gone through. Some of the most horrific things I've dealt with are some of my most grateful experiences because I wouldn't understand things. I feel like I've gotten through and I'm okay. I made it on the other side safely. So I would love to have an opportunity to share with somebody younger than me. And if God puts somebody like that in my path, that'll be the greatest days to use it for something good or even just conversating on here. That's why I've become less fearful about talking about it. It's something happened to me. I didn't do anything wrong. And I want people to know because I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of people listening have also dealt with it and never shared it. So I try to be open for that reason. But anyway.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we all get the gifts we don't want, and it's how you use them, right? I never wanted gender to come to my house. I don't want to be an advocate. I don't want to be in this position. This isn't fun at all, but I'm compelled. I'm compelled to save other kids. So yeah, with my daughter, it took about 1.5 years before she came back to being comfortable in her female body. And it was a lot of things that we did. We went on family trips to nature, teaching her how amazing it is to be a female and have your body, because our bodies are amazing. They really are. They're really cool things.
Yeah.
We should appreciate them more. So we did a lot of that, and eventually she came around, and it's a slow process going in, and it's a slow process going out. She's still growing. Her room is no longer dark. Like every day, there's almost something new that is moving her back to reality. And it's not just the trans part, but enjoying the world for what it is and actually seeing manipulation and making right choices. So every day it happens. She gets better and better. And is she still affected? Yeah. Because her mind she's only 17. The pornography that was sent to her was jaw-dropping. That's going to affect her for a long time. What she thinks a loving relationship should be is probably still warped. I mean, I asked her, I'm like, do you think your father and I talk about bottoms and tops and BDSM and choke each other? Like, is that a loving relationship? It's not. Nobody says that word anymore, by the way, making love. Maybe I'm too old, but now it's pounding, and that's not what it's supposed to be. I mean, like, look, you can have fun in the bedroom. I'm not being a Puritan here, but you have to have a basis.
It does seem to take the beauty out of it.
Yeah. And
the connection.
Exactly. And again, it's free to be you and me. We all go through these stages, but the softness of it and what is normal. Again, the queer theory. What is normal and what is acceptable behavior? What is good in the world? Is it good in the world for kids to be taken from their families at 12? No, it's not. Is it good in the world for teachers to stand in the shoes of parents? No, that's not right and it's not good. But these kids hear these messages. We have buses that are wrapped in trans flags going down our street. All these trans people walk the red carpet. Nobody talks about the detransitioners. They don't get on TV. They're ignored. And there are thousands of them.
That's something I wanted to talk to you about as well. Years ago, when I had walked away from my lifestyle, I was very vocal about it on Facebook. And I have some of the most popular things I ever posted with the most likes and the most comments, or not likes, but the most comments and the most traffic, was some of the things I said when I was openly saying, hey, I don't agree with this and I want to step away. And the amount of hate I got from people was unbelievable, comical almost. And some of it was for like abortion, and I was vocal about it, and I got a lot of hate, and I was like, all right, that's weird, and I got a little nervous. I was like pissing all my friends off, and it felt weird. I was like, I don't want to lose all my friends. And then I was vocal about something else. And then I had trans friends at the time, a couple in particular that I think about pretty regularly today. I wish they would just communicate with me. I would love to know who they are. I mean, they're people I care about still. And this is like 15 years ago now. I still think about them. But I'm blocked out of any communication at this point. But I posted up a video of a detransitioner, and I had never even heard of this. And it was a woman who was, had very manly features because of the physical changes they had done to themselves, and they were older. And the story was like a 10-minute long video, and the story was so compelling and sad. And I just put, wow, I didn't know this existed, or something along those lines, and put it out there. And that was kind of the last straw. The amount of hatred I received of being a bigot, and I was called the Taliban of homosexuality or something so stupid. And I was like, what are these comments? I lost all my friends almost overnight, most of them. And looking back, it was probably one of the best things for me. And the ones that did stick around, I still know today. But detransitioners in general, when I was looking into Our Duty and a lot of and some other organizations that you guys align with, I kept seeing this common thing of this hatred for anybody that steps away or detransitions, even if they are still considering themselves part of the LGBT community. And can you elaborate on that a little bit, and why they're not getting the same love and support and inclusivity that is being preached?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have to drop the L, the G, and the B have to be their own entity. They don't want to be tethered to the T and the Q. They don't. Because lesbians don't want to be told that a man who thinks that he's a woman should be their lover. They don't want that. They don't buy it. So they're against the trans movement mostly. But yeah, detransitioners get hate because this is a cult. When you leave the cult, you get hated upon. You're not, following the narrative. Remember, the whole story is that you can finally be your authentic self. You can be you once you transition. This is the greatest thing. It resolves all your mental health issues. It's perfect. And when they say, no, it's not, my body is destroyed, they go against the narrative. They don't want to hear from them. The detransitioners' voices are the strongest. So I work with a lot of them, right? In California, we've got Chloe Cole, an amazing young woman. She testifies with me now she testifies across the nation. But this young girl at the age of 14 believed that she was a boy, was given puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, 14 years old. Think of all the dumb things she did at 14. And her parents consented because they were told, just like I was told, your daughter's going to die if you don't do this. She will kill herself. Desperate parents want to keep their kids alive, and they believe the medical community, and they say, okay, I'm going to do this because I want my child to live. Even if it's a shortened life, even if it's a life that they don't agree with, they want their child to live. And so it's a Sophie's choice, right? And so at 16, this young woman had her breasts removed. She wasn't thinking about breastfeeding or having children when she's 16. She's a child herself. She can't consent to this. And then at 17 or 18, she regretted it. And she started to speak out, like how easy it was for her to transition, how the doctors pushed her. We have another young girl in California who, at the age of 12, they approved her for a double mastectomy. 12. I mean, that's absurd. At 13 and a few weeks, she underwent the knife. This child had mental health issues already in her file, and they ignored them all, and they took a knife to this kid. At 18, she's 18 now, and she has forever bodily issues. Testosterone in a woman atrophies the uterus. That means going to the bathroom can be painful, incontinence, sexual relations are painful. They may not be able to hold a baby, carry a baby. These are children. These are children we're doing this to. And that's why I said they're worth $1 million, because no one knows how to fix Chloe Cole's leaking breasts. Or they're not breasts anymore, nipples.
And that's a very serious surgery. Like the mastectomy portion of it. So not to make this about me, but there is something I feel like I have a bit of a connection understanding what it's like to go through that. For me, in my young age, when I was a troubled youth, this wasn't the route that was most common with medical professionals. It was medications, antipsychotics. I was put on an incredible amount of medications. There are several years of my life. I couldn't tell you a single thing. I have a lot of memory loss. I have a lot of issues I deal with now. One of the antipsychotic medications they put me on was called, now I'm drawing a blank, Risperdal. Mm-hmm. Risperdal gave me gynecomastia. Mm-hmm. And then once the gynecomastia became too much of an issue, I got a double mastectomy. Mm. And there's another thing that is like, this is like probably the most troubling thing in my life that I'm daily overcoming. I thought I'm never going to have a wife. I'm never going to have this. I can never go shirtless at the beach. Because as an adult, I'm looking and I'm like, I could have just worked out. I could have just got off the medication. I could have done. They were so quick to put me under the knife. And I remember they sold it to me as this like quick and easy thing, getting me in and out. And you know when I found out that they were going to remove my nipples, the scar was going to go from under one arm to the other arm. I found that moments before I got put under. And at that point, I didn't know I could say no. I was so uncomfortable when they said, they started drawing the lines. I was like, what are these? And they started drawing the lines around my nipples. I was like, what is this? And my mom asked. My mom was there too. And it was hit with such looking back, it was purposely not told to us. It was purposely not told to us. They told me it was an in and out. Everything's going to be normal and looking fine. And I wound up getting an infection that left me like deformed in some ways. And at this point, I mean, a lot of my tattoos started with that, like wanting to cover things up and hating who I am. And I'm very open about that as well. I hated my skin and I wanted to cover it up with anything I could because I just felt like this wasn't my body. And it wasn't in a trans way. It was in a different thing. I just felt, now I feel robbed a bit. But anyway, again, I don't want to make this all about me, but I went through that surgery. I know what that was like. I know a little bit about being uncomfortable in your own body and having to live lifelong with that because of things that adults pushed you into. And I mean specifically the medical team. And I understand why a lot of people contemplate suicide. I had contemplated it for many years of my life. A lot of it was involved with or revolving around what I just discussed. It just boggles my mind to see this pushed on such a mainstream and being talked about so nonchalant. And that's the mastectomy, let alone, like bottom surgeries. It's an emotional thing to think about. I can't even fathom some of the conversations that you're having with these people and what their life is like. But thank God there are people like you out there and they have a place to turn to, because when you're going through something like that and the very people that were there in your support system are now shoving you away, you're alone and you're still like that young person. Suicide is obviously a thought. It feels like this is just such a funnel of, like you're saying, it's a funnel into money for some and death for others. And it just seems like there's nothing good. There's nothing good coming from this. And how long is it going to take before the people involved see this or have a conscience, that is stronger than the dollar? It's just crazy.
The suicide aspect of it, because that's their argument. It's, these kids are going to commit suicide if they don't get this. That's just not true. It's a lie. Kids who have mental health issues, ADHD, OCD, internalized homophobia, a lot of autistic kids get transitioned. Lots. Most of the detransitioners I know are autistic. So we're culling the herd, by the way. We're sterilizing the deplorables, the unwanted. You can look at the pictures of Dr. Gallagher, who's in Florida, who does 2 breast removals a day, sometimes 4. She shows pictures of her patients. You'll see a pattern in them. They are the uncool kids, the unattractive kids, the kids that don't belong anywhere, the overweight. Taking advantage of those people is just horrifying. That's what they're doing. They're preying on autistic kids and kids that don't fit in, picking them off. Easy. It's easy pickings for them. It's disgusting. And people are cheerleading them on. Hate yourself. That's what transition is. It's collusion of self-loathing. Doctors saying, you are wrong, I will fix you. And then you have the medical community playing God. I watch some of these doctors, and when their eyes light up, we were trying to change sex. This isn't fun and games. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And by the way, you can't change sex. You can do as much cosmetic surgery as you want, and you're still a man. You're a man with breasts. You're a man without a penis, but you're still a man. That's a fact. Can't change that. They're selling them on this. And these vulnerable kids, and people blame the detransitioners. Well, you chose it. You consented. How can they consent? How can they consent when that's the only option, like with you? The only option is to cut you from side to side. That's what they told you that you had to do. And so you did it. That wasn't your only option. It wasn't. But that's what they tell these kids, and they tell these parents, this is the only way you're going to feel better.
They sold me a freedom. I was tortured at school and ridiculed for it. I ended up leaving school. I went to night school, all these things, and I was offered a freedom back into not being that person, the not cool kid.
Yeah, and we should be celebrating the not cool kid, because Elon Musk was a not cool kid. You know, he has Asperger's. Look at him. He's amazing. So many people, if they can get through those difficult times, puberty's hard. And even if you think that the person's the cool kid, they still have, they're still insecure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I grew up, it's funny, I wouldn't swim in ninth grade. Ninth grade, we had to swim, right? There was a swim class. And I got a doctor's note to get out of it because I didn't want anybody to see my body. My body was perfect. I mean, my goodness, I would kill to have that 14-year-old body. But you're insecure. You're not comfortable yet in your skin. It takes a while. It really wasn't until I was 30 that I was like, I don't care. Like, sorry, my butt's a little big. Deal with it.
A lot of this seems to be towards girls rather than boys. Do you know anything about, as far as the numbers go, with trans youth? Is it leaning on one side more than the other?
Yeah, it's about 75% girls, 25% boys. Boys are catching up because social contagions work that way. It's the girls first, and then the boys get hit. But the boys fall into a really distinct pattern. They're autistic, usually brilliant, IQs, really high IQs, don't do well with women, really into video games, really techie, engineering minds, and lonely. And they don't, there's a lot of failure to launch with these kids. I mean, we have this across the board. 16-year-olds are not getting their driver's license anymore. Kids are dropping out of colleges. They're not making it because they are told also that distress is not normal and you're not supposed to feel any distress and you're a victim. And so you can't ever overcome it. Like listening to your story about your childhood, like broadens my heart so much because you didn't have the conversation that you're a victim and that you're living every day looking back at what happened to you as your identity. It affects you, of course, but you overcame it and became a better human because of it. We're now teaching kids, you keep living that past or that horrible thing, or you keep that's your identity. You can never overcome it. We're telling kids that you can't feel distress, that you can't be sad. If you're sad, you got to take a pill. No, you've got to learn to exercise or eat right or coping mechanisms. Because what trans is a maladaptive coping mechanism.
And that coping mechanism will follow them into everything as far as the response to something wrong. Like for me, medications were given to help every problem I had as a child. And that turned into a very serious drug addiction. And I'm grateful to be alive today. But yeah, it was like, okay, something's wrong. I go to this. Well, I don't have the money to go to a doctor. Well, I'm going to try these drugs and this and that. Oh, I'm getting the same effect. It teaches these very non-independent ways to deal with problems. And it makes it so that you're always dependent on something else, somebody else, somebody else's ideologies, and never thinking for yourself. And I think a lot of the, like you were talking about, how it catches almost like a fire to these teens is a lot to do with that, where it's like you're just constantly, you're not thinking for yourself. You see somebody else do something, you want to be a part of it. You want to, but the reason I asked about the girls specifically is because a lot of what you've talked about today, a lot of from my own just research and listening to people, it seems to be a lot of girls around the age of puberty. Now, I didn't go through puberty as a girl. I went through it as a boy, and it was, I don't know, it was whatever. For girls, it seems to be a little bit more intense. I can't speak to that. I'm just curious, do you think that has a role? Because their bodies change far more than a boy's, in my opinion. And that could be very scary for a child. And do you think that some people pushing the children into the trans path are feeding off of the fear and kind of giving the person a freedom of, well, you don't have to go through this?
Absolutely. So there's a couple things there. First of all, puberty is starting younger. Physical puberty is starting younger, but the maturation of the brain is still 23 to 25. So you have an 11-year-old, and there's a pattern with this too. So kids who are, girls who are trans-identified tend to have gotten their period early in life. They're one of the first of their friend groups. So there's all these medical patterns that, how do I know? And the doctors don't know. Ridiculous that they're not paying attention to this. But so the girls are starting to develop. They don't like it. It's great to be neutral. I remember having the neutral body, and boys and girls, we could play together. I could take my shirt off if I wanted to because there's nothing there. I was just like one of them. And then you start to develop and you start getting hips and you start getting breasts and you start getting fat distribution that you didn't have before. You start getting pimples, of course. But your body starts to look like a sexual being, but you're still 11. You're still 12, and you're not really thinking about sex as a 12-year-old girl. And you have people looking at you, older men looking at you, and you don't like it because you don't know how to handle it.
So I've heard that before. As a young girl, like I don't know what your experience was like. Did you notice those eyes?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, you notice the eyes. And you really want the eyes of the younger boys who are not going through puberty and not paying attention to you. But you get these older men, you're creeped out. So that's when girls start going opposite. So when my daughter started wearing those giant sweatshirts, I thought nothing of it. I thought, okay, I get it. Like you've got now breasts and we all hunched over, you're hiding your body. And then these girls, nobody likes their period. Newsflash, nobody. Nobody likes it. We're not like, woohoo, this is awesome. And so when a girl then says, I don't like my period, well, are you trans? That might mean you're trans. We can put you on birth control to stop your period. Well, that's an option? Well, cool. I'm in. We can stop your breasts from growing by putting you on puberty blockers. You can go back to that neutral body and not have the male gaze on you. Oh, I'll take that. I don't want this. And then again, let's go into the porn. So you're 13. 13-year-olds, I don't know, I think it's like 74% have seen porn.
The number keeps getting lower and lower.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
At 10, I think it's the average Well, 10-year-olds, 20% of 10-year-olds, something like that, 15 to 20% of 10-year-olds have seen porn. By the way, they're seeing it on their school iPads, so they're not blocking this.
I saw it in my school. I remember when the internet came to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot
that
of
was where I
kids.
first saw it.
A lot of kids see it at school. Yep. But then a girl looks at this. So now imagine being a 13-year-old girl and saying, this is what I have to subject myself to. 4 men having sex with me, my face being smushed in a pillow. I don't want that. Because that's what they're seeing. They're seeing horrible images of what they have to subject their bodies to. They don't want it. And so they flee from it. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah, it's a much different perspective when you put it like that. That's horrifying.
It is. And that's, again, I was the free to be you and me. I'm very anti-porn now because I see what it does to the brain. And for a 13-year-old, they can't understand that that's acting, first of all. They can't understand that that's not really what happens, but they want to flee from it. So girls want to escape their bodies. And you can see it even with the masking. I don't know, like when we removed the requirements of masks in California, the girls kept them on. They were hiding themselves again because they created an avatar. Remember, the internet is filled with filters and standards that they can't possibly meet because they're not real. When I grew up, we had the supermodels, but we weren't competing with them because they were over here and the rest of us were over here. And now the internet makes it seem like everybody's perfect, everybody's beautiful, everyone's having a good time, but you. And so their sense of what they're supposed to look like and be is completely warped. So it's a massive undertaking to fix this.
So piggybacking off of that, as far as fixing this, our duty, what does that look like for you guys? What are some of the things, like, can you tell me maybe something you're proud of that you guys have accomplished, like within the last year or so, as far as legislatively? What kind of changes are being made to fight this?
Let me start with our big one, because California is kind of a cool state in one way that we get to make our own laws. The people can make their own laws through the ballot initiative process. We have a ballot initiative. It's under protectkidsca.com, which will, if we get it on the ballot, which we have to collect 1 million signatures so that we get the 550,000 ballot ones, would get stop schools from lying to parents about their kids struggling with gender, get all boys out of girls' bathrooms, sports, and safe spaces, and stop all the gender interventions on kids under the age of 18. The polling is in our favor in California. This blue state, 75% of Californians are against gender mutilations on kids. 75%. So if we can get it on the ballot, we win. So that's my big push for this year. Anybody can donate, and I need people to donate from any state. They can donate. Only Californians can vote on it. But if California returns to reality, the rest of the nation does. Because we're passing all the bills. We are doing the most harm in the United States, California. So we have to end it in California. Last year, I wrote 8 bills. One was picked up. It was to require schools to notify parents if their kid is gender questioning. California Democrats refused to have a hearing. The bill is still alive. We're fighting to still have a hearing, so parents can come in and express their opinions about it. I mean,
what's their reason for not wanting to hear? Is there like a deadline that they're pushing it off until, or
no? They don't want to hear.
Dismissing.
No, they don't want to hear from the parents. They want to shut down the dialogue. This is what they do. We're going to continue fighting. They don't want the Democrats up there because I bring Democrats, lesbians, gay men. We all come. People like you, tatted up and look like blue collar They can't call us all right-wing bigots.
I was going to say the people that we're told don't exist.
Exactly. We bring up detransitioners. They don't want to hear from us. They don't want the news covering it. They're burying it. But what we did was the Assembly member, Bill Asaley, he authored the bill. He's a Republican. Only Republican bold enough in California to take a really firm stance. We moved to the schools and we went to school boards and we asked them to pass the parental notification policy. So we have about 9 school boards that passed it, more waiting in the wings. So you can go to your school board and you can pass these parental notification policies. Anybody can go to the school board. You don't have to have a child in the school. You don't even have to live in the district to do this. We stopped a couple really bad bills last year. One was that would require courts in a custody battle to prefer the parent who is willing to transition the child. So we killed that one. And this year we've got 3 bills that I'm working on, which is to extend the statute of limitations so that detransitioners can sue their medical providers.
That's huge.
Yes. And I'm hoping that a Democrat will author the bill. I'm getting close. This is the winds of change, by the way. So the Democrats are now speaking to me.
That you're talking about people, the Democrats, as far as other, just other people that you're speaking with, or are you talking about people that are elected officials?
The elected officials.
Okay.
The elected officials. So, yeah. And because the Democrat rank and file, they're actually on our side. I'm one of them. I'm a Democrat. Democrats are against this. The leadership is not paying attention to this. Gavin Newsom is on the run. He's our governor. He understands that this is a losing proposition for him, so we're pushing harder and harder. We are relentless. We're not going to give up. We're going to make him have to say, do you think it's okay to remove a 13-year-old girl's breasts? Yes or no, governor, who now wants to be president? Answer that question. Because it happened in your state, in your town, Sacramento. So that's what we're doing. So we've had a lot of successes. We need more. We need more people who are willing to donate $25, $100. It doesn't matter. Donate to protectkidsca.com. We use all the money to fight. I don't have a salary. I don't get paid. I'm out. I haven't practiced law for 4 years now because this is all I do. People need to put their money where their thoughts are. They need to hold their lawmakers accountable. Pennsylvania, you guys have a chance in some of these bills. Go to Our Duty, sign up to volunteer. I can set you up with the people in the state of Pennsylvania that are fighting to protect our kids. I didn't know how to do any of this. Yes, I'm a lawyer. I was a construction lawyer. None of those real skill sets crossover. I knew buildings. Mm-hmm. Architects and engineers were my clients. You don't need to have a special skill set. You need to have fire in your belly, and you need to talk.
What would you say to those, and I'm sure you experience people like this all the time, I'm sure you probably even talk to people, and tell me if I'm wrong, who will tell you something privately but be afraid to speak outwardly in public about it. What would you say to somebody like that who doesn't want to be looked at as a bigot, who doesn't want to lose their friends, their status, maybe get in trouble in the workplace? Because now everything is threatened. Your whole life is threatened if you come out with these things. What would you say to somebody like that?
Where are your morals if you won't protect children? What does all of that matter if you're not protecting children? And by the way, you can get a new job. You can get new friends. And the new friends I've made are fantastic. I didn't lose a lot of friends. I was actually pretty lucky, and that's strange. You're actually not going to lose as many friends as you think you will, and you might convince them. People are starting to wake up and understand what's going on. As far as your job, you can sue. That's retaliation for your beliefs. I know we don't have time for this, but this is all about First Amendment too, folks. We are losing democracy because we are not speaking up. I have been doxxed. I didn't even know it. I didn't care. I don't know how long ago I was doxxed. Big deal. Nothing happened to me. Stop being afraid. If we're afraid, nothing changes. Who do you think's going to come in and save us? It's us. Sorry, it's us. We have to save our country. Thank God Elon bought X.
Yeah.
I mean, I got kicked off for saying men are not women. How is that controversial? Etsy shut down our store. Like, this is happening. The control is happening. We're watching it in real time. It's not just about the trans issue. It is about the American way.
I believe I even saw that a bank last July refused to have an account with you, or did they shut down an account?
With one of our companion-ish groups, but no, not with us.
Okay.
But we'll see, because...
Okay, I was reading an article. I didn't even know a bank could say we don't align with your ideology and we're not going to work with you.
That's how big this is. So you can do a GoFundMe, and then the GoFundMe people will not give you the money.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yep.
Yeah, even Patreon.
Yep.
They're trying to shut down it. They're almost creating this counterculture in and of itself. They're digging their own grave.
Yeah, and it might happen to you on YouTube.
Oh, we've had videos shut down, and it just is what it is, and I just refuse. I'd rather, there's episodes that we've done that only get released on audio, and that's fine. I'm not going to censor myself. I have risked different things in my life. At this point, I agree with you about the morals. It's worth way more to the people who, are afraid to do something. I try and give them the image of the end of the movie Titanic, which we've all seen, or just a sinking ship. Those people that were gripping onto the end of the ship, just gripping onto it, thinking, well, maybe if I just hold on, I'm not going to go down. No, you're on a sinking ship. Let go of it. Start looking at the future instead of just going down with the ship, because that's all you're doing. You're clinging onto something that is failing and falling fast.
Look at what is happening with the Hamas and the anti-Israel. No one is safe from queer theory. It's going to continue to attack. It's going to go until we say enough. Would you have hidden the slave running away? Would you have hidden it? Her or him? Would you? I would have.
You know why I believe you? There's a professor that once he was talking about different things, and people were I forget how this came up, but for all the people that said they would have helped the slave who's running away, and they would have been against slavery, he said, well, think about it like this. He said, what today that is widely accepted do you stand against regardless of the repercussions? And nobody had anything to say. He's like, then you would have been for slavery. You would have been the people you're reading about. But seeing you, I mean, you've put it in your step. You're actually doing these things. You're standing against it, and that's. Do you regret it? Like, what happened to you that you're like, oh, is your life so terrible now that you've come out and been vocal about this? I mean, is there really a reason to fear this, or is this all nonsense?
The thing that I said to the parents, because I was anonymous for a while, I had a pseudonym. I was told to be afraid and not talk, and I'm from Philly. We're kind of badass,
Absolutely.
We're gritty. We're gritty.
And we love it.
Yeah, that's right. But I had a fake name. I was under the cover of darkness, and I called somebody who was out, and I said, has anything happened to you? Not really. You get some hate texts and whatnot, but big deal. I really don't care about that. People make fun of the way I look or the way I move. I'm a big girl. I don't really care. But I told my parents, I said, I will go first. I will be the first one across the field shot at. I mean, I'm not the first because there's many who have gone before me. But I'm going to be one of the first parents in California to go out there, but you have to come behind me. I will test it first. I've had Antifa 5 feet from me, and I'm alone. I will go first on that. I will stand there, and I will let you know that it's safe to come out. But you need to come out now. The tide has turned. It is time for everyone to come out. Silence is acquiescence. Silence is acceptance. Do you accept this? Do you accept that children can change sex and that they should? If you do, you're probably not listening to the show. But if you don't, talking about it over the dinner table, not changing a thing. It's not doing a thing. You've got to go do something. Courage begets courage. You're going to find more people are going to be joining you. The people who are, you'll be surprised the number of your friends that are actually in your camp. People have to be bold. Is our country worth it? Because I'll tell you, China and Russia are laughing their fannies off right now. We are imploding. We're cutting off children's body parts. We're silencing ourselves. They don't need to destroy us. We're doing it ourselves. They don't have to fire one gun. We're doing it to ourselves. We're giving up our First Amendment rights just like that because we're sitting silently, because we're afraid. You cannot be afraid. Our country's worth it. Our children are worth it. Our values are worth it. I will go to the grave. Look, this is a Herculean task. And I have had many sacrifices. This is really hard on my family. Really, I want to go back to playing tennis and growing tomatoes. That was a nice life. It's an easy life. But my grandkids are worth it. My kids are worth it. Your kids are worth it to me. I'm exhausted, sleep deprived, all those things. I don't have to be if everybody just starts standing up.
That is really inspiring. Your story has been inspiring. How can people reach out? You said about making donations. What channels can they go to if they wanted to reach out to you personally, if they had questions, if you're okay with that? How can people reach you or make a donation?
People,
Our Duty.
Okay, so people can go to ourduty.group.com and they can fill out the contact sheet and I'll get the email like I got from you. Mm-hmm. Right now, people can donate to Our Duty, but I prefer that people donate to protectkidsca.com because, again, if we change California, we change the country. The donations are not tax deductible, but that's okay. We have to get this ballot initiative on. We have to be successful. It will change our country. So that's where I hope people donate. They can also go to info@protectkidsca.com and get a hold of me that way. It's faster through Our Duty. But there's Our Duty groups. There's an East Coast branch. There's a lot of groups out there that are willing to take anyone's skill set, even if it's, help us with our website, write an article, or do calls to action. Because, sorry, I'm going on. But one of the things I do is I have an email list or a listserv for California bills. And when something is coming up, I'll send an email blast out with really simple instructions. Go here, go here, go here, and say this. Call this number and say this. Sign this petition. They're very, very simple, and they're not, overly cumbersome. They don't come, weekly. They come when when we need things, people to do stuff. These things matter. Signing these petitions, they actually matter. The American Academy of Pediatrics, we wrote letters after letters to them to stop their policy to transition kids. These things matter. The more letters they get, the more it makes them stop and think. When people's phones are blowing up, everyone called the governor in Ohio from all different states telling him not to veto that bill. He vetoed it, but now he's starting to walk it back because he's seen that's an unpopular decision he just made. But if nobody makes those phone calls, he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Exactly. And if we're not speaking, somebody else is. There's somebody who's talking to him. And we need to shift the balance of that. Make it overwhelming. Because, I mean, that 75% you're talking about in California, I'm sure that 75% believes a lot of other things that we've talked about here today, are wrong or aligns with a lot of things we've discussed here today. And I think that's more than just California. I think that's nationwide, but it doesn't feel that way because the squeaky wheel is the opposition right now, is the person that wants to push these kids into this lifestyle. I think what you're saying is absolutely the most important thing, is to being vocal and taking, if you go out, that's a lot of weight for one person. But if we all stand up, which I'm seeing more and more people, there's almost no reason to not stand up at this point. We can burden this together, and that burden will become so much lighter. And we'll realize how unified we really are in this, and how these squeaky wheels are really this very small minority that is changing and shaping this nation, and it needs to stop.
Those squeaky wheels, they don't have kids.
Oh yeah, very, very often. I believe that.
Yeah, they don't have kids. They have the time and they have the money.
What's the saying? We don't have kids. We have yours.
That's right. But we have the numbers if we show up. We have the numbers, and the numbers matter more than the money does. The numbers do.
Is there anything that we didn't cover today? A final thought, something that we didn't get a chance to cover that you wanted to speak about, and as much time as you need. Is there anything you want to share with everybody?
Oh gosh, we covered a lot. No, I don't think so. Okay. I want people not to be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm in California. I'm outside of the Bay Area. I've been doing this for 4 years. I'm still living and breathing. Don't fall for it. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. I can guarantee you that. That Antifa guy who stood in front of me, 6 foot something. I took out my camera. I said, "What's your name? Can I take a picture of you? Can I take a picture of us together?" He put his mask up, rode his bike away. That told me all I needed to know. He's afraid of me. He's afraid to reveal his name. Don't be afraid.
Well, thank you so much again for coming out. For those of you listening, please go check out this organization and the things we spoke about here today. I think this is very powerful, and I can't say thank you enough. So I really appreciate you coming out here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and to everybody else listening, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Bye.